Hey everyone, it's Steven. Today I have the 2025 Chevy Equinox LT all-wheel drive. This is the base trim of Chevy's compact SUV, which competes in a very crowded segment here in the US, up against rivals like the CR-V, the Toyota RAV4, Mazda CX-50, and some new stylish ones like the Hyundai Tucson, the Kia Sportage, and the Subaru Forester. The Equinox was fully redesigned for the 2025 model year for a fourth generation, comes with some nice styling updates to make it a bit more modern on the front and the rear, makes it a bit more in line with the other Chevy products that you'll see throughout their SUV lineup. But the real star is going to be the interior with that huge 11.3-inch standard infotainment screen that runs on a Google-based system. Unfortunately, the engine actually stays the same, so you're going to get that same engine setup that you have in the previous generation, which is a 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, makes about 180 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque. Those are pretty small numbers, especially for such a large and boxy vehicle. You can see, like most SUVs, Chevy has made this vehicle larger and boxier over the years. So that engine right there gives you 0 to 60 times of about the mid 8-second range, so it's certainly not going to feel like a fast car. I will say it's relatively torquey. This is the all-wheel drive variant. You can also get this in front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive costs an optional $2,000, and it does feel pretty torquey at low speeds, kind of similar to the Subaru Boxster engine. But then, you know, once you get above 40-ish, you can definitely tell it's starting to crawl a bit more when you're getting on those big freeway ramps. The base Chevy Equinox, the LT trim, starts at $28,600 for the MSRP. This one, as tested, is actually about $35,000 thanks to some very nice packages that give it things like a 360 camera and some nicer seats. So with the all-wheel drive variant, you actually get an 8-speed automatic transmission. With the standard front-wheel drive, you get a CVT instead. So I will say that this probably is going to be a bit smoother and just generally feel like a better driving vehicle if you opt for the all-wheel drive, but honestly, it's probably not that different. Fuel economy is decent for a vehicle of this size. You've got 24 city, 29 highway for a combined 26 miles per gallon for the all-wheel drive. One of the very nice things Chevy did for the 2025 model year with the fourth generation is that they made the lineup a bit more simple in terms of trims. You've got the LT at the very bottom. It used to be the LS, but now the LT actually comes with some nicer goodies, and I will say the interior generally feels much more upscale than it did in the third generation of the Equinox. If you've seen some of those look pretty old at this point. So I'm really glad Chevy finally gave this very hot-selling vehicle a makeover. And in terms of the upper trims, you can choose between the Sporty RS, which really isn't that much sportier, but looks sportier, or you can get the Active, which is their rugged off-roading Equinox. Honestly, both of them are just going to be cosmetic packages, nothing too special about them, but they do make this vehicle look a lot more snazzy. All right, let's talk about the exterior of the 2025 Chevy Equinox. I think Chevy has done a great job redesigning the exterior styling while keeping it pretty much in line with the rest of its lineup, right? You've got the Chevy Silverado in the Blazer, which you can tell this definitely took some cues from. Looks very similar to those vehicles, kind of just a smaller Silverado. You've got a lot of chrome on the front fascia, which I think does give it a nice premium look, but you'll notice there's actually not much chrome on the rest of the vehicle. So they're kind of going for both a rugged and upscale look, you'll kind of notice as we go throughout the exterior, but I think that overall it looks fine. I think it looks pretty good, looks modern. This color, though, is actually my favorite part of this specific tester here. This is called Lakeshore Blue Metallic. It is a no-cost option. It's actually a new color option for the 2025 model year, and I think it looks fantastic. I love it. It's kind of like a bluish green, looks really great in almost every single lighting. I think it's much more interesting than the typical white or black ones that you're going to see, you know, just in everyday life. So you've got the Chevy logo front and center. That has not changed. Very, very classic Chevy there. You've got some black fenders on the bottom, and kind of throughout the side of the vehicle, you'll also notice a lot of black plastic, giving it that more rugged look. I don't really know if Chevy is expecting people to go off-roading on this vehicle. I guess that's what the Active trim is for, but I think this looks fine, right? You've got very sleek headlights. I think that's one of my favorite parts of this redesign is that you've got sleeker headlights than something like the GMC, for example. Actually, this corner reminds me a lot of the Hyundai Palisade when they first debuted that back in, like, what, 2020? So I think that's actually a really good look. I like this corner a lot. Now, going into the side profile of the Equinox, you can see the nice chrome lettering spelling out the word Equinox. Chevy does that throughout pretty much their entire lineup. They spell out the model name, which I think is always a neat look. Otherwise, on the side profile, you've got some pretty typical boxy body lines, very similar to the general design language these days of modern SUVs, making them boxier and larger. So the more interesting part of the side profile, I would say, is going to be these 17-inch alloy wheels. They are standard. They look pretty good. You've got some thick tires around them. It does make it look pretty off-roady, at least off-road capable. On the side, you've got these fenders, black plastic fenders running across the entire vehicle. That's also very similar to a lot of styling these days, similar to what Mazda does, Subaru, Forester, all those sort of vehicles. You've also got some nice aluminum roof racks at the top. You can actually customize the appearance of a lot of this car. You can customize it to have like black roof racks. You can black out actually most of the exterior. Makes it look a bit more sporty and menacing, but honestly just more of a unique look. One of the most unique parts of this exterior is that you can get a two-tone roof. I think that's only on the Active or RS trim, but I think a two-tone roof is really crazy for this segment, right? Not many manufacturers allow you to do that sort of customization at this price point. Otherwise, you'll notice that the windows are framed with black plastic, giving it that same look, very cohesive look between the black plastic on the bottom of the vehicle and next to the windows. And I do want to mention how beautiful this Lakeshore Blue metallic color looks from the side profile in this sort of lighting. I think it looks really fantastic here. Now looking at the rear fascia here, this looks very similar to the Chevy Trax, which I honestly don't love. I don't love these taillights. They kind of look like they're crying or kind of sad. They make it a really interesting like Y shape. I really prefer the look of the Traverse. I love the 2024 redesign of the Traverse. I think they did such an excellent job with that rear. And I guess the Equinox is a far more best-selling vehicle to them. I actually looked it up. They sold like almost twice the amount of Equinoxes compared to the Traverse last year. So I kind of wish they did something a bit more special with the rear rather than kind of model it after the lower Trax. Otherwise, you've got a very typical design language for Chevy, right? I really wish they did something a bit more different, maybe spelled out Equinox or something like that. You've got the Equinox badge in the bottom left corner, as well as the all-wheel drive badge. There is no badging for the trim level, so you don't know that's the LT, but if you had the Active or the RS, there would be badging for that trim instead. So you can kind of figure it out by process of elimination. On the bottom here, you've got that same black plastic cladding, giving it that more rugged look. No exposed or visible exhaust vents or anything like that, right? This is definitely not going to be a sporty vehicle. Exhaust does not sound like anything, really. And then going into the trunk here, you do have a power liftgate, which is pretty nice. That is standard. Gives you 29.8 cubic feet of cargo space with the second row seats up. And if you put those completely down, you get 65.3 cubic feet of cargo space with the second row down. So definitely a lot of cargo space. This is pretty average in its class though. All right, let's take a look at the interior of the 2025 Chevy Equinox. Again, I love this blue color. It's truly one of the best colors I think available for this car. So you do have the form of keyless entry and where you have to press this chrome button here. Unfortunately, that makes it feel a lot less luxurious than the models where you can just put your hand right here and it senses it. So a little bit of a loss in my opinion, because I do like the actual keyless entry a lot more. Pressing the button feels honestly not great at this point. You do have a standard Chevy key fob, nothing special about this one. It's kind of sleek, but kind of wish they did something a bit more special here. All right, taking a quick glance at the cabin, one thing you will notice is that there's no sunroof. Unfortunately, I wish there was even a small one at this price point. It's not that uncommon for an economy vehicle, a non-luxury vehicle, but I do think it would make the cabin look a lot more airy and nice. All right, and let's take a look here really quick. You've got power adjustability for the driver's seat here. You don't have power adjustability for the passenger, unfortunately, and this is part of the convenience package. So standard, you don't get this, unfortunately. You also don't get memory seats until you step up to a higher trim like the RS or Active, and you get the convenience package 3. So you've got a lot of different convenience packages. It's very confusing. The packaging on this vehicle could be a little better. I feel like a lot of it is just kind of carryover from the previous model years, but you get the convenience package 1 standard, so I don't really know why it's called a package if it's standard. But you can upgrade with the convenience package 2 for the LT trim, like what I have right here. Or you might have noticed the seat is pretty far back, and I basically did that to make sure you can see everything when I get in this vehicle, but you can see it's a pretty premium feeling cabin when you get in, right? This looks more expensive than the $35,000 price tag would suggest. And I mean, you actually get the same screen setup even at that $28,000 MSRP. So for about $30,000, you can get a very, very similarly appointed interior. And I think the interior is certainly one of the highlights of this vehicle. They made huge improvements across the board to this vehicle. You should have seen, you guys should look up the 2024 Equinox. Now that is an old looking vehicle, very, very stale, really screams 2000s. This one definitely brings it into the modern era. You've got a lot of interesting finishes. Just the level of materials is certainly a step up. I think in general, this feels much more luxurious, and I think that's, you know, along with that higher price tag of about $35,000 for this, you can kind of expect a better car. So I do think that a lot of people will like this way more than some of the other offerings, although I don't think Chevy is marketing this one that well, because I haven't seen much about the Equinox, but it's a pretty impressive vehicle at this price point. So let's talk about the star of the show right here. This is going to be your 11.3-inch infotainment system, I believe. This one is quite large. You can see it's definitely high quality, very quick to respond, very snappy. You've got some quick buttons here, and just everything is super fast. This is Chevy's newest infotainment system. Super smooth, look at that. Very similar to BMW, and it's a Google-based infotainment system, so similar to what you see in Volvos. You can easily pair your phone. It's super snappy. Look how fast this Google Maps display is. This is one of the fastest I've ever seen. So Chevy did not skimp out on the R&D money for their main compact SUV. This is one of the best sellers in their lineup now, and they want to make sure that it has a very valuable infotainment system. This feels very, very good. The sound system, I do want to make a quick note, is not good. That is a very disappointing part of this vehicle, is that the sound system, they have cool looking speaker grills, but unfortunately it is just a pretty abysmal one. It sounds so hollow. I would expect more for an SUV, especially in this day and age. Even the RAV4 sounds better. Overall, the actual connectivity of the wireless Apple CarPlay has been very, very instant, much better than in my Macan, honestly, so this definitely has some of the luxury rivals beats in that area. The tech is wonderful. I will also point out that you do get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto standard on this vehicle, which is really nice. You don't get a wireless charging pad standard. This one does have it as part of that convenience package too, which is pretty cool. So you do get a nice wireless charging pad. I love how you just slot your phone in, drop it in, and it charges. No mess. This is a very, very practical vehicle. I think they've really designed it well for everyday living. This is not a vehicle that will thrill you in any way, but this is just a usable vehicle for families to take around. And I think that's all you want when you're buying a Chevy Equinox, right? All right, let's take a look at this now. This is going to be an 11-inch digital gauge cluster. Looks far better than what you've seen in the previous generation of the Tahoe, for example. This is the same thing you get in the Traverse now, and it just looks a lot better and cleaner. So it is fully digital. You do have a few different display options here. You can kind of see it's really interesting. You've got Google Maps, and you've also got Apple Maps as another option. So it's a very interesting system where you can kind of go between each of the screens at a click of a button on the steering wheel, but you can't actually customize anything on the screen. So definitely not as customizable as some of the other rivals here, but you know, you can choose whichever one you like the most. This is kind of more of a small display, a simple one, and this one's a bit more fancy. I do like having the music shown right there. Shows everything that you need to know at a glance. All right, going into the steering wheel here. So this is going to be a pretty nice, thick leather-wrapped steering wheel. So it feels good. It feels very light, very easy to steer at low speeds and high speeds. I will say it's a little too light in my opinion. But yeah, you've got some nice chrome accents around the steering wheel, Chevy logo, pretty basic stuff. You've got your adaptive cruise control stuff, which is actually standard, which is pretty nice. You do have that as an option to get Chevy's Super Cruise, which is awesome. So you can step up to that probably in a higher package, convenience package 3 or something like that. But yeah, you do have that available to you as well. You'll notice I'm missing a button here. And on the right-hand side, this is going to be your media controls and your heated steering wheel. So pretty easy, simple button to click there. That is standard as part of the convenience package 1. You've got heated seats as well. Let's talk about these seats really quick. So I think they look quite good. This is called Evotex, I believe. So it's basically their version of synthetic leather. It feels quite good, very comfortable seats, and they look really nice. I love this perforation. I think the pattern is really subtle, but very cool. So you can get ventilated seats as well, probably in that convenience package 3 as well. But otherwise, the seats feel comfortable. They look good. These are your basic black seats. You actually get cloth seats standard, so this is actually part of a package to upgrade to these Evotex seats, which look a lot nicer, honestly, and probably feel a lot better too. But this really does make it feel a lot more luxurious. The door panels are also quite excellent. They have a good contrast of materials. You do have some piano black plastic, but a lot of leather. Armrest feels really great. And just overall, it looks nice and clean. I will say the speaker caps look good, like I said before, but the system is bad. But yeah, just in general, the door panels do give off a pretty good look. I will say, like, this is definitely at the same level of competitors now, whereas before it definitely did not feel like it unless maybe you step up to the highest trim. So at the base trim level, I do think this is certainly competitive. One of my favorite parts about the interior is this really interesting trim piece right here. It's kind of like a shark fin sort of sticking out on the side right here. Very interesting texture piece. It's not, well, actually it doesn't have a texture, but it looks like it has a texture, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it just kind of juts out and looks nice, honestly. It would be really cool if there's like some ambient lighting bar right there, but unfortunately you don't get ambient lighting on this vehicle. I'm pretty sure even on the higher trims, no ambient lighting as an option. So that is definitely something the Koreans are doing better at this point. Otherwise, this dash texture is very interesting. I think one thing that I really like that Chevy did is they added a texture to almost everything, right? Like, look at all of these little textures all across the center console stack area on the rubber wireless charging pad. And a lot of storage options. Yeah, there's a lot I could talk about here. So you have a lot of storage options, as you can see. You've even got some under storage right there, which is really cool. Kind of feels like an EV in that aspect. But yeah, so I really like what they did with all these textures. And these air vents look pretty cool too, right? They're not just your standard air vents. They have this nice chrome on it, and it looks really good. I like the aluminum accent here as well. And what I was going to mention before is those cool air vents that kind of flank the left and right of the cabin. They look very fancy, right? You've got this kind of like faux carbon fiber looking like fancy thing surrounding them. And I like I always like circular air vents. I love Mercedes when they do that, and I think it just looks pretty neat. I'm glad that Chevy kind of spiced it up a little bit. I do also want to call attention to the rear view camera. Very, very cool. Very easy to change. Ooh. Yeah. You can adjust it with these buttons on the side. You can adjust the brightness, things like that. But yeah, the rear view camera is really a very cool invention that I first tested in the new C8 Corvette. At first, I wasn't a fan of it because it's hard to focus on it, right? Like, it's hard to look at it in the peripheral vision and actually focus on what you're seeing. But at the same time, once you get kind of used to it, it's actually a very clear picture, and it's much better than a normal rear view camera, right? So I don't know. I'm curious if what people think of this gimmick or actually useful. And then right here, I think Chevy has done an excellent job balancing physical buttons with an infotainment system that looks fantastic. So kudos to Chevy for keeping it physical. All right, you've got 3 level heated seats for both the driver and the front passenger, and just, you know, simple, easy buttons, right? This all looks really great. It is piano black, but it feels easy to click, very easy to use. And I love that I can easily adjust my temperature without having to take my eyes off the road. These are super easy to touch. Don't have to confuse it with the volume knob, which is up there. So I think Chevy did a great job balancing this out. You've got your push to start button right there. And like I said before, a lot of storage options. You do have a USB-C and a USB-A port down there. And this is just a nice general storage area for whatever you want. Keys, I have a little parking pass here, and you have nicely large size cup holders. So very easy to fit water bottles in. The nice part is they have these rubber inserts so that it keeps your water bottle firmly in place. Like I said, you've got this really nice under storage right there, kind of similar to what you have in EVs. And you have a very deep cubby right here. This is like super deceptively deep. I feel like you could fit a lot of stuff in there. So yeah, great practical storage options. They did a really great job with that. The door panels, you have great space for water bottles, whatever you want there. All right, let's go inside the second row of the 2025 Equinox. Obviously, a very important part of any practical family car is going to be the back seats. You can see you've got that same cool texture for those Evotex leather seats. All right, legroom is going to be decent, much better than the previous generation. Kind of with that boxy frame for that new styling on the outside, you get more legroom and more headroom. I really wish there was a pano sunroof though, because it really would make the cabin feel a lot more airy, but honestly, I don't think anyone will complain. This is a massive amount of legroom and headroom for rear passengers. You've also got some nice conveniences. You do have this really nice area here that has 2 USB-C charging ports, but no USB-A back here. You have some little vents. They look definitely like an afterthought, but what would you expect at a non-luxury price point like this? And otherwise, the seats look fine. They feel good. They're still that nice leather. You've also got some door panels that aren't as interesting as the front door panels, but they're fine. You've got a nice armrest, you've got that storage pocket, and just pretty much everything you need for an excellent family hauler. Chevy definitely prioritized making this practical since families are going to be probably the biggest buyers of this vehicle, right? All right, welcome to the driving impressions portion of this review. So like I just said, with it being a more family-oriented vehicle, this vehicle certainly is not that fun to drive, right? No one's buying a Chevy Equinox to toss it around, right? No one's going to think this is a Camaro as much as the styling might feel similar these days. So overall, the driving experience is quite tame for this vehicle. You definitely don't have crazy handling. The acceleration is abysmally so. 0 to 60 in the mid 8 seconds is quite slow, but honestly not too different from any other vehicles. You don't even get 200 horsepower out of that 1.5 liter engine for this vehicle. So definitely don't expect a fast vehicle, though I will say it's relatively torquey at low speeds. So overall, I think this is exactly what Chevy is going for, a practical, easy to drive vehicle. There's nothing disguised about this vehicle, right? I think they advertise it exactly as, you know, a family hauling vehicle that is just a pleasant all-around driving experience. I've been very impressed with the ride quality on this vehicle. I think that's a huge win for this generation of the Equinox in general. The previous generation felt unrefined, whereas this one I was very surprised. Very smooth handling in general. The car is very quiet too. I think that's one impressive part, is that at low speeds, it's very, very quiet. The isolation from outside sound is pretty good. And what's really selling me on this vehicle personally, well, I would never buy this honestly, but what's really selling me on this car in terms of what I like way more than I thought I would is just the technology. It has a fantastic blend of physical controls, and the infotainment is so snappy. That Google-based system is really perfection. I love the integration. I cannot overstate this enough. I love the integration of Google Maps with your digital gauge cluster. I think that is the future. If only you could put that in with CarPlay. I think that's really the future, is getting CarPlay to integrate with those systems so that you can see your turn-by-turn directions in your gauge cluster or a heads-up display. Unfortunately, this vehicle does not have a heads-up display. I don't think there's even an option at higher trims, but in general, you can get anything you want in terms of safety or tech. You've got blind spot monitors, standard, which is pretty cool. You've got a 360 camera on an Equinox, which is pretty sweet at this price point, right? Most high trims will have a 360 camera, right? The highest trim. And even then, you might need a package for some luxury vehicles. One also really a nice part is that you can customize your alert for your blind spot monitors, your rear cross traffic alert, all that sort of good stuff, your parking sensors. You can customize it so that it vibrates your seats, which I think is a very, very cool and very unique setup. You can customize it to be a beep or the seat vibrate. So right now I have it on vibrate seat, and it'll basically vibrate the left side of my seat if there is someone in my blind spot, which is super cool. I think that is a very neat touch, that it kind of also does it based on where the danger is coming from. So overall, this new generation of the Equinox has really impressed me. I think Chevy has sometimes put out some pretty underwhelming vehicles, but for the affordability of this vehicle, combined with the really cool tech upgrades and just the styling overall is pretty cool. I still love this blue color. I think they've put out a really good package with this. I don't think it's going to blow anyone's socks off. I think the interior is quite impressive and a dramatic improvement over the previous generation, but I don't think that's what this car is meant to do, right? It's just meant to be a reliable, dependable, nice to drive vehicle, and if it can get you that experience, that's a really great plus at this price point. So while I wouldn't outright recommend this more than something like the Hyundai Tucson or the CR-V, I do think this is a much more compelling vehicle now that it's in its 4th generation and fully redesigned. I think they've made some really excellent improvements overall on this vehicle, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it to anyone if they're interested in things like a very cool tech integration with Google Maps, things like, and they love the styling or something, right? Like those are definitely some things that could sway me to recommend this vehicle. So that's all I wanted to talk through today. Thanks so much for watching my review of the 2025 Chevy Equinox. You can check out some of my other videos down here, subscribe up there, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Thanks everyone, bye.